I mean Assume Avoid and his datapack team, no disrespect, but I've been using the Vanilla Tweaks Graves datapack for a while now, and I've found plenty of issues and lacking features that make me think, maybe I shouldn't be using this. So I decided to make a new Graves datapack that adds more features and fixes plenty of the issues I found with the original. Firstly, Graves can pick up both items and XP, though you can still disable Graves collecting XP if you don't want that. And you can simply right-click a grave with an empty hand to open it, rather than having to stand in it and crouch. In addition, other players picking up your items just because they're standing in the same spot is frankly annoying. So I made it so you can prevent that by crouching when you open it. Only the user who crouches when opening a grave can pick up the items dropped from it. Another thing I didn't like, graves can sometimes accumulate on multiplayer servers, and of course other players can't get rid of them because graves can only be opened by their owners. I created two solutions for this. One, you can enable grave robbing. I'll show how to configure everything toward the end of the video, but you can configure the datapack with simple commands to customize whether or not players can open graves they don't own. And by default, grave robbing is disallowed. 2. If you're an op, you can give yourself a grave key, which is a consumable item that lets you easily right-click graves while holding the item to forcibly open them. I'll show how to give yourself this item toward the end of this video as well. Furthermore, I didn't like how you couldn't tell who actually owned a given grave. So when standing near a grave in this datapack, the name tag of the player who owns it will be displayed above it. Also, unlike Vanilla Tweaks Graves, this datapack doesn't store the items in a bunch of floating minecart hoppers 300 blocks above the grave, where you can simply fly up and open them to steal people's items. Items in this datapack's graves are stored in the grave data itself and are completely inaccessible to other players without cheats if grave robbing is disabled. Additionally, the hitbox of these graves only takes up 1 block rather than 6, and they don't get messed up when you push them with pistons. Just like in the Vanilla Tweaks datapack, you will see the coordinates of your grave in chat after you die. But this creates a problem if you crash or disconnect before dying, and then you never actually get to see these coordinates. So in this datapack, you can also display them again by entering /trigger grave. And for those playing with reduced debug info, all of this can be disabled. Now for the big list of death scenarios. No more graves 1 block above the ground just because you were jumping or received knockback, because when you die in midair, your grave will spawn on the ground. When you die above or in water, your grave will sink to the bottom. When you die in lava, your grave will remain at the surface. When you die to the void, your grave will appear at y=1 with a grass block below it. When you die inside blocks, your grave will spawn on top. When you die in the same place as another grave, your grave will spawn above that one. This datapack and my Players Drop Heads datapack are built to be compatible with each other, as player heads will actually drop from players instead of just going to their graves like in the Vanilla Tweaks datapack. Another unique feature, when a player goes offline on a multiplayer server, any graves they own will become mossy. This can be useful for partially determining whether a grave is abandoned or not, or okay to break if grave robbing is enabled. And of course, when you open a grave, the items are collected in the same order that your inventory originally had them. This is my inventory before dying, and this is my inventory after getting back the items from my grave. To configure this datapack, enter /function graves config. This will give you 4 different options. The first is grave robbing, which is the ability to open graves you don't own. This is disallowed by default. If you want to allow grave robbing, click this first command and enter 1. If you want to disable it again, click it and enter 0. The second option is whether graves should save experience orbs dropped by players on death. This is enabled by default. If you want XP to instead drop outside the grave, click the second command and enter 0. To enable it again, click it and enter 1. The third option is grave location, which allows players to see their grave coordinates when they die and when they enter /trigger grave. This is enabled by default. To disable it, click the third command and enter 0. To enable it again, click it and enter 1. The fourth and final option is a command that gives you the grave key item. You can enter or click this command to give yourself the item. This item, which is consumed upon use, will allow you to open any grave despite grave robbing being disabled. The grave key is by default only obtainable via that command, and only ops have permission to enter that command, just like the previous 3 config options. To use it, just right-click a grave while holding the grave key, and the grave will drop all of its items and/or experience whether or not it is yours. To uninstall this data pack, enter /function graves uninstall. This will disable graves and reload your data packs, but it will not remove any graves placed in the world. I will have a command in the description that lets you delete all graves currently loaded in the world. After entering /function graves uninstall, you're good to remove the datapack file. To install this datapack, click the link to my website in the description, select your Minecraft version at the top, and click the download button on Graves. Once you've downloaded the zip file, do not extract it. Simply put the zip file inside of the datapacks folder in your world's directory. Then go back to the game, run /reload, wait a moment, and then you can check your advancements to ensure the datapack is loaded, or just to get info on it. That's all. I hope you enjoy the data pack.